Ever wonder how two people from the exact same environment have totally different outcomes? Think about it. We've all heard the story about how one son turned out to be an alcoholic while the other became a multimillionaire. And tonight I'm going to discuss exactly how that happens, why that happens, and why you can get the most out of life. Tonight we're going to be reviewing the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is one of my favorite books, guys, as you guys can see here. I've been reading it religiously the last couple of weeks, and I've read it once before. I'm going through it for the second time right now, and just so many gems in this book, guys. I got some notes we're going to go over tonight, and let's just get right into it. First and foremost, thank you everyone for getting on. Just for some ground rules, if you guys have questions, comments, please feel free to put them in the chat as we start discussing this book. And I believe that you're going to find this very impactful if you're serious about getting different results out of your life and really finding ways to optimize your time and get the transformation that you desire. And so really the first thing that I want to talk about, the title of the book, right? Atomic Habits. What does that mean? Atoms are an extremely small amount of a thing, but they're also a source of immense power and energy. And as a result, you combine atomic with habits. Habits are routines that we basically perform automatically, and you get a powerful outcome for you and for your lives, guys. And so in the introduction, James Clear just comes out of the gate, boom, and punches you in the face. He gets hit literally in the face with a baseball bat, shatters both eye sockets, shatters his nose, fractures his skull, and he is immediately rushed, airlifted to a hospital to have surgery. Life-changing experience. I mean, I can only imagine what he felt like going through that. And this is a guy who's supposed to be a professional baseball player. So he goes through this traumatic event. And something I really want to highlight about that is that trauma transforms if we allow it to. So with James going through this difficult time and getting hit in the face with a baseball bat, losing consciousness, going through months of surgery, months of rehab, it forced him to essentially start all over. Could you imagine going through life, guys, having to deal with being a pro prospect in your junior year of high school and then started from scratch? Well, this is exactly what he encountered. And as a result of this, he experienced a ton of failure. The first failure he experienced was when he did recover within the year. He went back to play baseball, and guess what? He was cut from the team. Talk about something that really feels like a major setback. And now he could have quit. He could have made excuses. But you know what? He was discouraged, but he realized that he had to make a change. And so as a result of this, he really started to figure out that he had to change his habits fundamentally, just with small things, right? He started by sleeping earlier. He started by hitting the weights more. He started by basically reinventing himself and started from scratch when it came to how he was going to approach the game that he loved. And so this led to something major, a major transformation that happened to him. He ended up going to college, playing in college, and winning all types of awards. He became one of the best players in the country. And it really started to allow him to reflect on his life and say, you know what? If I can overcome that type of trauma physically, mentally, and emotionally, I think I found something that I can share with folks to really help them better their lives. And that was the birth of Atomic Habits, guys. And so, we're looking at some of the things that he talks about. And one of the big things he says is there's no such thing as an overnight success, but small habits will help you fulfill your potential. So the first story I want to share with you guys is the story of the donut story. And I don't know if any of you guys ever heard the donut story, but it goes something like this. If you eat one donut today and, go about your day, go about your business and everything's okay, is anything going to happen to you? Do you think you're going to, blow up and gain weight and things are going to change much? Not really. But let's say you do that tomorrow and the next day, and then maybe you up it to 2 donuts. After a while, you are going to see those negative consequences play out in your life. And so the same thing goes for the positive side of the spectrum, right? If you start making incremental habits such as eating healthy daily and taking the steps to really become the type of person who lives a healthy lifestyle, you will also see those results on the other end of the spectrum. And really the premise of the book is about compound habits. There was a janitor many years ago, I think it was like from the early 1980s up into the late 2000s, who was able to make $8 million. Now, he was a janitor. His name was Ronald Reed, and he worked at a gas station. And when he died, to everyone's amazement, he had $8 million in the bank. Now, he didn't come from money, right? He didn't have a rich uncle. He didn't inherit anything, but what he did was every week when he got his paycheck, he just invested in the blue chip stocks. The stocks like Coca-Cola, Apple, all the top stocks out there, the products he used. And little by little, through time, over the course of about 60 or 70 years, he was able to turn just a small amount of money in a long amount of time through compound interest into millions of dollars. And so that's really where this begins. I'm trying to get Henry Taylor on here. Let me see if I can add him, but it doesn't look like I can. Give me a second here, guys. Nope. Can we add? I'm not able to add him on here right now. I think Henry is listening. You're supposed to have a special guest, but we'll keep going with it, guys. All right, let's see if he's Henry, if you're out there, can you say something in the chat? Oh, you're here. I see Henry there. Can we go to channel? I see you there, Henry. Yeah, it doesn't allow me to put you on, man. But appreciate you joining. So in chapter 1 of this book, we'll keep it going here. And feel free to chime in on anything I share here. We're really talking about the British cycling team. So the British cycling team started out as one of the worst teams, and this was in 2003. They were one of the worst cycling teams of all time. They hadn't won a championship or anything in over 100 years. And so as a result, they hired a coach by the name of David Brailsford. And what David did was something that a lot of people didn't anticipate. But he started just looking at the little changes, the little habits that the team had, and just the little pieces of the puzzle, right? Of the process, I should say. So when it came to, for example, the bikes, he started looking at the bikes, looking at how they could be kind of just tweaked a little bit to make them a little faster. He looked at the uniforms. He looked at how they slept. He looked at what they were eating. And before you know it, by 2012, just by those little changes, those compound changes, they had set 9 Olympic records and had set another 7 world records and broke all types of records, guys, with small changes that really seemed like incremental, but it really, I believe, holds a key to what we can do in our lives in order to really have a massive transformation. One of the things that I've learned over time is that massive success does not require massive action. It requires consistency. And so I kind of look back when I was coming up, I was in my 20s. I wanted to get a 6-pack, right? And, I think a lot of us, we kind of focus on the outcome first and foremost. We kind of set a goal, and we're going to get to goal setting. But ultimately, it's really about becoming the type of person who's going to take those steps to make that happen. So what I ended up doing was I started reading all kinds of magazines. At the time, muscle magazines were in. Started doing all types of research, and I started really changing my lifestyle so that I had a routine where I actually would go to the gym twice a day. I had a gym at work, and I go after work. And before you know it, I got the result I wanted, but I didn't stop there because I had become the type of person who was going to work out. I became an athletic person by adopting athletic habits. And so to really sum this up mathematically, James Clear shares that if we get 1% better every day, we're actually going to be 37% times better by the end of the year. So just imagine if you're making $100,000 a year right now, right? And if you get 1% better each day, that's equivalent to making $370,000 more. That is a transformation unlike we've ever seen. However, a lot of people think they need to go crazy and make all these crazy changes in order to experience a massive transformation and shift in their lives. And that's not the truth. He talks about just small tweaks. Like he gives the example of if you're heading from Los Angeles to New York, imagine this. The plane sets its direction just off by 3 degrees. Tiny little amount. And if you do that, you're going to end up landing in Washington, D.C. rather than New York City. And so it's really about making sure we're clear on where we want to go and being committed to staying on path, staying on track to the goal rather than those little shifts. And it works the other way. If we make a small shift, we can get to where we want to get to. Your habits determine who you become versus who you could be. And I think that's really powerful. At the end of the day, if you want to predict your future, you got to really evaluate your habits over time, because time magnifies the margin between success and failure, and it will multiply whatever you feed it. And the other piece is, I think people sometimes when we start off on a goal or start off on a path to become successful to make money, we really sometimes get discouraged because the results don't happen fast enough. But at the end of the day, James gives a really good example of how success looks like using a scientific example. He uses the example of an ice cube. So let's say you have an ice cube and you have it in a room that's 25 degrees. When you go from 25 to 26, do you see any change? Not really. You go from 26 to 27, same, not much change. 27, 28, you don't see any rapid transformation until you get to 32, 33 degrees. The freezing point is 32. By the time you get to 33, just like that, that's when you start to see the change. And really the principle he's sharing there is that we have to be consistent with our actions and not give up because we're not getting fast results, because you might be on the right path, even though it doesn't feel like it. But something I've learned over time is that disruption follows intention. When I first started flipping, right, I got lucky on the first one. My very first flip, I jumped in with a partner. It started a little rough. We ended up getting it together and it ended up really well. However, I still didn't master the flip game. And so we jumped right to the next flip and we went from doing a little cupcake flip, as we call it, right? This was a little cookie cutter, single family townhouse that took about 3 weeks to a full gut, 4,500 square foot, almost 5,000 square foot, 3-family. And it was a crazy, crazy lift for us. We got through it. We learned a lot, but it was a struggle, right? And so that's really where we learned. Our real learning began there. And then from there, we were able to take off and do really well. So I really think it's important that you guys understand that success does take time. And same thing with exercise, right? A lot of us, we try to spot burn fat. And what I mean when I say that, right? You look at your body, you might have a little belly or you might have some fat you don't want it somewhere, right? And me and my wife talk about this all the time. There's a myth that people think you can spot burn fat. You can't. You can burn fat on your whole body by consistently putting in the work. And the same thing goes for your habits. And I think one of the big things he shares is habits must persist long enough to break through. He calls it the plateau of latent potential. Your work is never wasted. It's just being stored. So don't lose faith. Don't lose courage if you don't see the results fast enough. Keep going. He also gives an example of geological pressure and tectonic plates under the earth. They're always bumping up against each other. And before you know it, if this keeps happening for too long of a time, that's when an earthquake occurs. The same thing happens in your life. So stay the course. Something else that I thought was really powerful. What's going on, Jimmy? Welcome. Glad you're on, man. Something I thought that was really powerful that James Clear shared was goals versus systems. Have you guys ever thought about the fact that in every race, everybody wants to win? I think that, it sounds obvious, but there can only be one winner. And what separates that one winner from all the losers? I'll tell you what it is. It's systems. Like a lot of people think it's the goal that really will empower you to get to where you want to be. But ultimately, it's the systems. And he says, winners and losers have the same goals. Ambition isn't enough. Every runner in the Olympic wants to win. Every job candidate wants a job. Goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the process that leads to results. If you fix the inputs, the outputs will take care of themselves. So I'll give you guys an example for me, right? As a lender, my goal this year is to fund $100 million worth of hard money loans for investors in the local Boston area. Now, while that goal is great, how am I going to do that, right? Like, great, everybody wants to do that, right? Any lender would say, yeah, I want to fund 100 million. The reality is the only way that some of us are going to get there and others aren't are going to be the inputs that we put in on a daily basis. And so we need to really understand, right? For me, it's how do I prospect for leads? How do I process loans? How do I manage our cash flow? How do I make sure they're funded? Same thing goes for like someone who wants to keep a clean room. Let's say you have company coming over, right? I'm sure we've all been through this. You got the holiday season coming. You got people coming to your house. Now, when folks show up, you want to look your best. You want your house to look its best. And you find that motivation externally because you got an event you're trying to impress and really make sure that you entertain folks at a high level, right? But now you haven't changed your habits. So what happens a few weeks, a few months, sometimes a few days later, the house is messy again. And that's really where systems are really the stopgap to allow you to be able to consistently maintain whatever goals or whatever new pursuits you have in your life. And so I really think that's powerful. So my question to you guys is, and this is just keep it interactive. Do you think goals are still important? I know I do. James Clear basically says that goals really don't matter, because if you set the right inputs, the outputs will take care of themselves. But my counter to that is you got to have some level of goals, because if you don't, you can't kind of set the destination, right? Because if you don't know the destination, how do you know how to chart the course to get there? And so while I think goals are secondary, I think you got to start with the goal and then kind of get it out of your mind and focus on those systems every day, those inputs every day, to execute them at a high level. One of the other interesting concepts that really hit home, he said that goals kill your happiness. And the example he gave is like when we say things like, I'll be happy when X happens. I'll be comfortable when something else happens, right? I'll be comfortable when I have $1 million in the bank. I'll be happy when I find the love of my life. Like all of these things that people state and share are goals that we're kind of putting out there in the future, trying to achieve, but they're not really delivering anything for us in the immediate future, in the immediate present, I should say. And so he says that you should learn how to fall in love with the process rather than the product, and you can be happy today. I don't know what you guys think about that, but I know that, when he shared that, it was really powerful. I was like, wow, that's some powerful stuff. So, if you guys agree with that, put a thumbs up in the chat or say I agree, to let me know what resonates, or if you disagree with that. But I think that was really a powerful concept, the concept that goals kill your happiness, as opposed to you really focusing on what the process looks like and falling in love with that, so that every day when you're executing your systems, that's when you're happy. That's when you're satisfied. So I appreciate the chiming in and said, Mauricio, I think you have an idea on where you want to go, and it's possible, what's necessary to get to that destination. Well said, Mauricio. Appreciate you, man. The journey is the destination, Jimmy. Well said, man. I couldn't agree more. And that's really what we need to ensure we're enjoying that journey. The other thing he says is, when it comes to goal setting, the danger of the yo-yo effect. Y'all know what a yo-yo is? Up and down, up and down. He's like, when you hit your goals, the problem is that you end up reverting back to your bad habits. I can tell you guys, appreciate that, Jose. I can tell you guys when I was coming up and I did my first $1 million deal as a real estate broker, I think I ended up making it was a big commission. I made like $50,000, right? I was in my 20s. And I was super excited. I was pumped. I was amped because that was one of my goals, right? I wanted to be a $1 million agent. You see them all on TV. And so I ended up closing that first deal. And immediately after, I was depressed because I didn't know how to find another one. And, I think that's the problem when we don't have systems. We end up getting off track as opposed to having that confidence and having that foundation that's going to carry us and allow us to continue to go forward. So really appreciate that, Mario. See that? Yep. Appreciate the vote of confidence there and agreeing with the statements. Good stuff, guys. So the other thing I want to talk about next, chapter 1, section 2, is how your habits shape your identity. And, the 3 layers of behavior and change, it starts with the outcome, right? The outcome is we all want the nice car. We all want the nice house, and we all want the nice bank account, right? And so in order to get those things, a lot of times we focus on, I need to get this or get that. But we have to also look at the process. And the process is the system that is going to get us the things we desire. And then the last piece of that puzzle, which I think is very powerful, is identity. Our identities were formed through nurturing from birth. And it's really who we are at a core level. And really the struggle is, which one do you change first and how do you change it, right? Do you change, I want the nice car, so let me go finance that car and make it happen? Or do you say, you know what, let me find a system to make some money to get the car? Or do you say, hey, I am a wealthy individual. What would a rich person do in this situation if they wanted to acquire that asset? And I think we all know the answer. It's asking yourself who you want to become in order to have the things you want to have, right? And it starts with becoming that person so you can do the things you want to do to have the things you want to have. One really powerful example he gave was of two people who were trying to quit smoking. So you got two people, right? Imagine you're a smoker. Someone comes up to you and says, hey, you want a cigarette? He's like, nah, no thanks. I'm trying to quit, right? That's person number one. Person number two, you ask them the same question. Hey, do you want a cigarette? Now they're trying to quit, but here's what they say. No, thank you. I'm not a smoker. Who do you think has a higher probability of quitting smoking? The one who says, hey, I'm trying to quit, or the one who says, no, I'm not a smoker? Definitely let me know in the chat what you guys think. But I think it's pretty obvious, right? If you're saying I'm trying, there's no such thing as trying, right? Mario says number two. You got it on the first try, brother. There's no such thing as trying. There's only doing, guys, right? So like you're either doing it or you're not doing it. And that's it. So and I think that was a really great example of how we have to start to shift our mindsets and have the mindset of I want this versus I am this, right? I want to quit, or I'm not a smoker. I'm a person who doesn't smoke. And that's really the power there. The same thing he says, right? If you're a runner, you want to run marathons, you can go and do one marathon and get through it, cool. Or you can say, you know what, I'm a runner, right? Not I'm just doing a marathon, but I'm becoming a runner. And that just makes it so much easier to become those people. So unlearning and relearning, you can't get too attached to one version of yourself and one version of your identity. I think, it's very powerful for us to start to look at ourselves as an ever evolving personality. And, because of that, and what I mean when I say that is, for example, let's say, you're somebody who, you're overweight a little bit and you want to get in better shape. What you've been doing isn't getting you where you want to be. And so that means you have to adopt new habits that are going to get you there. And I say this all the time, but it's basically saying like what you wish worked, what you think works, or what actually works. And that's really where we have to start to reprogram ourselves and reprogram our identities in order to become the type of person who can do the things we need to do to have the things we want to have. So where does identity come from? I love it when James Clear shares this. He basically says it comes from two Latin words, essentitas, which means being, and identitam, which means repeatedly. So identity is learned, and you only believe in it because you have proof of it. I'm athletic because I work out. I'm studious because I study. I'm religious because I went to church for 20 years. It's all those habits and all those things we've done over time that really programmed our identity. And that's where we have to start reprogramming it to become the type of person that is going to allow us to achieve our goals. And it's a two-step process. First step, he says, you have to decide the type of person you want to be. And number two, you have to prove it to yourself with small wins. Ask the magic question when you're in any situation. And it's basically what would a blank person do? And so I'll give you guys an example of that, right? If you're someone who is trying to build a new business, right? You would ask yourself the question, what would a successful entrepreneur do anytime you faced an issue? And it starts to get your mind kind of thinking a little differently than saying, what would Rob do, right? Or what would I do? It's what would someone who's successful at whatever it is you're trying to achieve do in that situation? And if you don't have an immediate answer, find that person, right? Find someone who's in that space. Find a mentor. Do some research. Check in it with AI. Leverage all the tools available to you to get different answers than you were programmed to think just based on your normal habits. And I thought that was really powerful on that front. I see Junior here as people who are multi-layered individuals. So we're always doing different things and different versions of ourselves. Very true. Very true. And it should always be that way, because if you're not changing, you're not growing. And if you're trying to stay the same, you're falling behind, because life is moving full steam ahead, and you're either moving with it or you're getting swept up by it and getting left in the dust. So I think it's really powerful that we really commit to that, especially as men out here and folks out here really trying to be our best. The next section he talked about is how to build better habits, and he has 4 simple steps for this. He used the analogy of an 1898 cat experiment by psychologist Edward Thorndike. He learned based on repetition with these cats, putting them in mazes and allowing them to find a button where they could get out and get food, that initially some of the cats would take up to 2 minutes, right? And over time, after a couple of days, they could literally do it in 6 or 7 seconds. And the same goes for us when it comes to kind of figuring out habits, right? It's a 4 step. So there's a cue, which is like he likened it to like if you're a gambler and you hear the casino sound in your ear, it gets a gambler excited. There's a craving. They want to go gamble. They want to go play the game. The response is to actually go and do it. And then the reward is them going and actually playing the game and losing or winning or whatever happens, right? And so same thing, like if you have an office, let's say your job is close to a donut shop, and you every time you get out of work, you smell those donuts. It smells so good. I know I have a sweet tooth. I ain't gonna lie. And so anytime I smell sweets, a bakery, and I'm like, oh, I want to see what they got in there, and then I end up getting something, right? It's these cues that we get that will automatically trigger us to make a move in another direction. Another easy example of this, right? He says when you walk into a dark room, we don't even think about it. The first thing you want to do when you walk into a dark room is turn on the lights, right? So you can see. Turn on the light, and the reward is you can see, and now it allows you to do what you have to do. And he says over time, we start developing habits like this for everything in our lives because our brain doesn't want to use all that energy trying to figure things out on the fly all the time. You want to have habits and routines that you follow, and this is true for all of us. And so the negative side to that is, he gave the example of, let's say you're at work and you're struggling with something, right? You hit a stumbling block, you're feeling stuck. Instead of working through the problem, you pull out your phone and you start scrolling on social media, right? You satisfy a craving and you feel a different form of relief. It doesn't relieve the problem, but you feel relieved. And he says this is the negative side of us creating those types of habits, right? It's like a feedback loop. And every time you face that problem, you do that same thing again. It's temporary relief, but it's procrastination because you're kind of kicking the can down the road. Excuse me. So it really comes down to figuring out how to leverage the 4 laws of behavioral change in order to transform your life. And so he says how to create a good habit. Number 1, you got to make it obvious. Number 2, you got to make it attractive. Number 3, you got to make it easy. And number 4, you got to make it satisfying, right? And then if you want to break a bad habit, you want to make it invisible. You want to make it unattractive. You want to make it difficult, and you want to make it unsatisfying. A few weeks ago on the Investors Edge call, we had a psychologist on named Ray Lambert. And Ray shared how when he's in his office and he has to be highly productive and he wants to stay focused, it's easy sometimes to lose focus because he ends up kind of seeing his phone there. Oh, let me check if I got any DMs on social media. Maybe I got some new clients. And he was like, in order for me to stay as productive as possible, I need to basically eliminate that distraction. So what he does, he makes his phone invisible. And how does he do that? He leaves his phone in the car, which is about a 4-minute walk away from his office. He's got, big building he works in. And that way he has zero temptation in order for him to be able to focus, be productive, check all his habits off, and then he can do the thing that he wanted to do on his phone. And so I think it's really powerful, when we start to look at how we can create good habits or eliminate bad habits by just changing our environments and making it harder to kind of have these things that are distractions really get in the way of what our goals are and what we're trying to do. So definitely that was it for chapter 1. So that's the intro we went through. That was chapter 1 we went through, and I definitely would love to open it up for questions and see what's going on, where folks are at on this, guys. What do you guys think about this? Does anything resonate more than other things? Are there questions people had? I definitely would love to hear some feedback on what you guys think about how this happened. And next time we'll figure out how to get a special guest on here, because I think it's more engaging when you have a couple folks on, because we can have real discussions. If there aren't any other questions, guys, I appreciate everyone getting on tonight. We will do this again. And next time, we're definitely going to have Henry on here. Henry said adopting the system mentality is a game changer, especially in the real estate business. Totally agree with you, man. Totally agree. Junior says, my biggest quote was, it is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. Yeah, so Mario, you want to jump on the call? Yeah, you can hop on the call. Absolutely. That's a good idea. I probably should have had Henry hop on the call.
Hey, what's up, bro?
What's going on?
Pretty good, pretty good. So one key takeaway I got from the book was how, like how you said, he changes everything. How he basically painted the whole truck inside to have it white, so he could, see if it's like any dust was slowing down the bikes. He could adjust it. So that's one thing I kind of put in motion with me is the way how my goal is to find a first property. So the way to fix that is trying to get myself higher landlord list, and then do some skip tracing, and then try to give them a call. And like how I said with the 30-day challenge, like you have to make, start talking to people belly to belly and put my name out there.
I love it, man. Yeah, no, it's powerful, right? Because, once you put systems in place like that, where you can see potential pitfalls, you can also see potential opportunities to improve. It makes it very visible and easy to identify opportunities for growth and opportunities to get better.
Yeah. And the other thing I took away from, like how you were saying, this is my second time reading the book, but I actually paid more attention to it this time when he was saying, like how you were saying, with the goals. A lot of people put their goals first, but they don't see how the process is. And, going to your meetups and understanding other people's process of, going to the homeowner and ask them, hey, are you interested in selling your property? And sometimes that could be a yes or a no, but you took action. That's one thing a lot of people don't realize, that it's the hard work at the end.
Absolutely, man. Yep. No, 100%. It's 100%. It is going to require some hard work. There's no question about it. Awesome, man. Appreciate you sharing. Anything else you want to share before I probably jump to Henry, get him on the line here, see if he's still around?
No, that's it. That's it. I got it.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, same here.
Yep. Take care.
Yep. What's going on, Rob?
What's up, Henry? We're going old school, low tech here, man. We couldn't get you on the live stream straight up, but we'd love to get you on the live stream here, man. What were your key takeaways from the first chapter?
Give me 1 second. I can hear you twice because of
the feedback.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. What was the question?
Yeah, so what were the key takeaways for you, Henry, from chapter 1 and the intro?
I mean, for me personally, the coming back to the systems mentality just really, turns the mountains into hills, because a lot of us are very ambitious and we have these things that we want to really accomplish. And, when you're not hitting your target frequently, you can sometimes feel like you're not moving the can down the road. But, if you can, rest your head and look at, what you did that day and know you followed the plan, that kind of just gives you some assurance that you are on the right track. And I think it's super important, especially in the sales industry, when things are up and down and your emotions can kind of really be tied to results. You do need a particular metric that you can say, hey, I did my thing today. And as long as I continue to do so, I will see the result at one point, at some point. So I will see the result at one point, at some point.
Gotcha. No, sorry, Henry. I think it was feedback there. But I definitely wanted to share that.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to even work that out.
No worries, man. On the emotional front, I think that for me, a big struggle was definitely like when you're trying to hit a goal and you don't see that instant result, it's really, really hard to continue to have that motivation sometimes. And that's really something I feel like he didn't touch on a lot in the first chapter, in the intro. Just the letdowns that can happen in reality when you're like really striving to be your best and really grow, man. So, I think for me, like how I overcome it is just faith, understanding that the results take time. And then more importantly, that I need to just maintain discipline. My discipline is what is going to yield the results that I'm looking for. It's not necessarily instant, but over time, you just want to, keep getting better, keep getting better, keep getting better. and commit to that. Committing to that goal is how you do it. And I think the other piece is modeling our behavior after people who have already come before us and been successful. I think that is huge. It's kind of the lazy way for folks to get successful, right? And success and lazy, you don't really use that in the same sentence. But for me, I found that if I know someone took the same steps that I'm taking and it led to a positive outcome or result that I wanted to see in my life, then I know it has a high probability to work for me, and I'm willing to have the faith to keep on going. So I appreciate you, Jordy. Sound like that resonated with you as well, man, right? Because I think a lot of us try to reinvent the wheel, and there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's a biblical principle. And the sooner we understand that, the sooner that we can start looking for that framework that's going to allow us to become the person we want to become and get to that next level. Agreed, Jimmy. Copying successful people and companies are the key. Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And I think the other side to it is, there are two pieces to success. And I like this book because one of them he doesn't really focus on, because sometimes depending on where you are, you can't change it. And that's environment, right? Your environment is a huge piece of your success. And then your habits as well. Those are kind of like the two pieces that we have to figure out. But sometimes if you're a kid, you're stuck in a tough environment at home, things aren't great, or you're living somewhere you don't want to be, you can't immediately have that shift in the environment. But you can change your habit, you can change your mindset, and you can look for a model that is doing exactly what you want to do, so that over time your environment will eventually transform after you start to institute some of the different pieces of the puzzle that are going to get you where you want to be. So that's it. Anyone else have any points they want to share on Atomic Habits? Something that resonated with you? Something that surprised you? I definitely, want to keep this interactive with you guys. I know we lost you real quick, Henry, but anything else you wanted to share before you had jumped off there? No other thoughts? Let's see here. No, sir. All right, cool. No worries, Henry. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is Einstein calls it the eighth wonder of the world, and that is compound interest. And compound interest works, it's a principle that works in every aspect of our lives, whether it's our small habits that compound into massive success over time, or if it's literally investing money and seeing that interest accumulate. But I really want to encourage everyone to just be patient enough to let that happen, right? Like in Proverbs in the Bible, King Solomon, the wisest king who ever lived, he said, wealth is accumulated piece by piece and little by little. And I think like we always think we need to have this massive move and like to get there. But I want to tell you guys that even if you are currently not seeing the results you want, stay the course, because know that it takes time. Know that it takes time, and just make sure to seek mentorship, talk to folks that are successful, and confirm if you're on the right track or not. Junior has said, to write a great book, you must first become the book, by entrepreneur and investor Navarro Riverkent. Yeah, man. I read his book, and that's the truth. You got to live it, right? If you want to write a book, you got to live that. That experience is what is going to empower you to learn and actually grow. So cool, guys. This was the first chapter. Next week, we'll jump on Sunday night. Same thing. I'll work out the technical difficulties. My apologies. This is the first time, so please be patient with me as we're working this, because, again, my goal is to have a special guest on with me as much as possible, so we can have an interactive conversation. And I really appreciate you guys coming on. Appreciate the comments. And please spread the word, guys, because this is going to be something we're going to be doing consistently here to really just help each other grow, gain additional knowledge. And the name of the book, Jimmy, we're reading right now, I'll show you quickly. It's Atomic Habits by James Clear, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. Over 20 million copies sold. And then what Junior say? When is the breakfast sandwich food truck opening? We'll see, man. When you're ready to fund the venture, when you're ready to fund me, man. I'm an expensive food truck operator. Appreciate you guys. All right, guys. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for getting on. Until next week, until next time. And by the way, before we get off, if anyone wants to jump into the Investor's Edge, this week we have my cousin Benjamin Gomes. He's going to be speaking on Tuesday morning. He is going to be talking about how to hack your DNA in order to get the physical results you're looking for. So he's a trainer. He's trained a lot of celebrities. He's down in Miami. He has a program where once he knows your blood type, he can tell you exactly what you need to do from a health and nutrition standpoint, from a physical fitness standpoint, from a workout standpoint, in order to transform your body and transform your health. So definitely something to keep in mind, especially for all the men out there looking to get better, looking to get stronger, both physically and mentally. He definitely is someone that is a great resource. So let us know if you have any questions. Hit him a resource eye, and we'll get you on there. All right, guys, stay blessed. Have a great night. Take care.